It's not a free project. I'm not going to
No. I just wanted to.
No, I swear to ask.
Councillors, can I have your attention, please? I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council. This meeting started earlier in the day to consider a confidential matter, and I now reconvene this meeting. It is pleasing to see that as the COVID-19 restrictions continue to ease, we're able to have a public gallery in attendance again, so I welcome our public gallery. Thanks for coming down. We will commence the meeting with the following reflection. I would ask those gathered to join us now for a few moments of silence as we reflect on our roles in this chamber. Please use this opportunity for reflection, prayer or thought to focus on our shared intention to work respectfully together for the well-being of our whole community. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I will call for any apologies if there is any apologies today. There being none, we will move on. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting as listed? Councillor Moore. And a seconder, please. Councillor Cameron. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest to declare? Ordinary business. The Council conducts its meeting according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for tonight's proceedings are as follows. Item 6.2.2, Cardinia Biolink Plan, withdrawn by Councillor Davies. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council adopts the attached Biolink Plan, that the human resource budget in Table 2 of the Biolink Plan is considered in the annual budget process, and 3, that the budget in Table 3 of the Biolink Plan Action Plan is also incorporated into the long-term financial budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. Councillor Davies, if you'd like to talk to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ross, for seconding the motion. Council has a legal, ethical and social responsibility to manage and protect biodiversity within our Shire. Cardinia has a highly fragmented landscape, which comprises of less than 29% of native vegetation across the Shire. 94 of our native plants and 63 of our native animal species are either rare or threatened, and 33% of our native vegetation communities are listed as endangered. Our new Biolink plan identifies voluntary design, establishment and implementation of environmental corridors, which will improve the flora and fauna connectivity throughout the landscape. By providing that connectivity, it's an avenue for species to breed and add to their genetic diversity. And it's also been developed with the latest technology in computer species modelling. So it's included mapping, priority analysis, and then identifying indicator species. The indicator species will be used and analysed in subsequent years just to track how this work has progressed. It is highly comprehensive work. And it will direct our investment in conservation management activities and build an understanding of how, across the Shire, we can efficiently and effectively enable the fauna species to move throughout the landscape and support targeted actions such as the weed and pest, animal control, fencing, revegetation, ecological burning, community education, how all these conservation works can best be scheduled and implemented. This is really exciting. So it's also not without cost. It is budgeted at a total value of $1,970,000. over the next 10-year period, and of that, 1,280,000 will be funded by council. So the rest is by grants. It is also hoped that additional grant funding will be available and be accessed. As a side note too, community safety is a key objective, specifically fire safety, noting many of these corridors are heavily vegetated and by the roadsides. And the creation and management of the biolinks that are actually safe to people and their property is identified as one of the main goals within the plan. It's balanced and considered alongside the need for the connectivity for flora and fauna. The Municipal Fire Management Planning Committee will be a collaborative partner in the design of all landscape scale Biolink corridors. And as part of this key priority, any corridors within 150 metres of dwellings will be excluded. Bushfire risk mapping to inform their decision making, and exclusion of roadsides and tactical fire access roads is also included. In conclusion, councillors, I consider this work to be significant and innovative. I'm very proud to endorse this, and tonight I seek the support from fellow councillors in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll now go to Councillor Ross to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies. Look, this is an extremely important linkage between the urban areas and what's happening in Cardinia Shire, and over the previous probably 50 or 60 years, where Cardinia Shire was sparsely populated. We had small towns, and as the growth's happened, and nevertheless we have housing estates and farms get built up and areas get stripped of vegetation, all these corridors get lost. I've personally seen, I know down in Bunyip, some people there who are really active in the relationship with these biolinks, and on their property that was absolutely sort of stripped clean, you can see these 10-metre areas where they have fencing that go along, and they plant lots of trees there, and they actually can show you all the different birds that inhabit those areas. And without the trees, they wouldn't be there. So, and also too, I know through many of our projects in the past, the amount of work that's done on the environmental studies on the area to talk about the linkages. It might be frogs going through an area. It could be native species which are in small, which are not extinct yet, but are very rare to find. Have to be protected, and if you don't have these links up between areas where they live and where they want to go, I mean, how do you make it across the Monash Freeway down here? We'd be lucky to get across ourselves. They need support and they need help, and I think it's unique that we have this wonderful opportunity that we can participate in this as a council, and we can strategically put plans in to and put money aside to make this happen. Quite often you find the groups who do a lot of the work are volunteer groups, or groups that just do it for the love of what they do. And if we can assist them with some funds to actually help them do their projects, it makes it all the more worthwhile for them. Anyway, I just think this is something that, you know, we talked earlier on council about, you know, the legacy we leave on council when we leave, and I'd like to think that we can leave a legacy for future generations, that we did something in this space to try and preserve and even rebuild back some of the areas that have lost their vegetation and flora and fauna, and also animals and bird life. Anyway, I encourage my fellow councillors to support this, and it's a really, really interesting read. As you read through it, you'll get to see all the different things they're doing, and it's quite extensive. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies and Councillor Ross, for really summarising the plan. I'm just really pleased when you look at the budget considerations in the future, and we're seeing almost doubling the amount of commitment to this policy than previously was in our future budget. So I think that is fantastic. We went through a consultation period. Thank you to everyone who contributed to that consultation process. It did occur over 2 years. Obviously we had COVID in between, but there was a number of workshops, 8 workshops workshops. 62 community group members participated in that. 87 separate contributions via the Biolink plan interactive map, and also 6 public community questions were responded to online. Just really pleased that as part of the increased funding, budgetary funding, we're going to see increase the current 0.5 EFT land management officer role with additional funding to a total full-time position ongoing from 2023 to 2031. That's a commitment of $430,000. I think that is definitely welcomed. I know that department in council is under-resourced with the amazing work that they do, so that is great. Also support the Bushland Reserves team for key projects of 0.2 EFT over 5 years. Also undertake monitoring of indicator species in a priority natural resource areas over 2 years, and also increase pest animal management program from 9 to 10 years. Also reallocation of $90,000 from additional funding to existing fund for the regional pest animal facilitator. So, these were changes when we went to consultation. Those are the changes, and that's why we're seeing an increased budget, I think, which is really good. So I'm really like this plan, and I look forward to working with the community and council officers to deliver that into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Before I go back to the mover, I'd just like to say a few words, and only to support the previous words of my fellow councillors. This is a wonderful achievement, this plan. It really recognises the unique biodiversity that we have currently in Cardinia Shire, and works hard to harness this and to conserve it for the future, so our future generations can enjoy the types of amenities that we have here. And we have such a large Shire. It's 1,250 odd kilometres in its breadth, all the way down from Mount Dandenong, from the Dandenong Ranges, all the way to Western Port Bay. And we have so many unique species and varieties of flora and fauna that we really need to preserve, because we've lost so much of that across our landscape. Only last week there was a report that came out, and I think there was 125 new additions of animals put on the red list that previously weren't considered at high risk of endangered species. And this is something that continues year on year. So doing what we can to preserve in our backyard, I think, is such a fundamental, important issue. So I'm really pleased to hear the words of support tonight for this plan. Thank you, councillors. I will now go back to Councillor Davies to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield, Councillor Ross and Councillor Owen for your support tonight. I echo the Mayor's sentiments of the unique biodiversity in Cardinia and the unique challenges which can be proactively and innovatively protected by this great work. So I confirm, councillors, that tonight I seek your vote in support of the officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along to item 6.2.3, Cardinia Life Creche, withdrawn by Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council notes that the Cardinia Life Creche utilisation has decreased over the past 4 years, endorses the measures detailed in option 1 of the report to operate the service in a more sustainable manner, endorses a fee per 90-minute session of $10.65 for members, $12.10 for non-members, and $14.70 for occasional care users, effective 1 January 2022, and thanks the Creche users and Cardinia Life members for their feedback to the Cardinia Life survey. Thank you.
May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll go back to you, Councillor Davies, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk, for seconding the motion. Firstly, Mayor Springfield, I understand that this report was actually prepared several weeks ago. So with your approval, can I please request to ask the General Manager of Liveable Communities, Lily Rosiak, via the CEO, Carol Jeffs, a question?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you, Mayor. In the report, it states that 7 children have been attending the creche. Since the Cardinia Creche reopened in November, how many children have now been attending the creche? What type of promotional activities have been undertaken to increase utilisation? And is there any other information that you can update Council with tonight, please?
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to advise that the Cardinia Life Creche did reopen in November in line with easing of state government COVID-19 restrictions. Pleasingly, there has been an increase in attendance over the month, up to an average of 10 attendees per session, and occasionally even more. A plan for communications has been developed and implemented and includes targeted social media promotions and electronic direct mail marketing for users of Cardinia Life and for Council to distribute through our networks. Consideration will also be given to including the creche promotion as part of future Cardinia Life marketing and membership campaigns that will be running from mid-January.
Thank you. Ms. Rosick, back to you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Rosick and Ms. Jeffs, for your advice tonight. Mayor and councillors, I would like to briefly speak to the report. The Cardinia Life Creche has been proudly operating for 15 years, and utilisation of the creche had reduced, and an average of 16 children were attending over a 3-year period, down to 7 in 2021 financial year. So with the declining attendance, efforts have now been made to increase the patronage and reduce the expenditure. This is absolutely necessary to develop an increasingly financially responsible model. It's not unusual for councils and local governments to actually incur significant costs in the operation of recreational and specifically aquatic facilities. However, running a service such as Cardinia Life Creche for 7 people at a cost of about $100,000 a year, it's not sustainable and action needs to be undertaken. So the council officers, along with the aligned leisure staff, have undertaken a range of initiatives to increase the attendance. It's included surveying users, promoting the service, and it has led to increased enrolments. And feedback I've heard is wonderful. The fellow parents that I speak to through my networks are rapt. They're really happy. They're like, it's great to get back exercising. The staff here are wonderful. And there's so many benefits to having an active community that aren't always, seen in the numbers, but healthy, happy. Like it's complicated, but it's a great thing. And I want this creche to continue, as do numerous families, but my family don't use the creche. We use other childcare methods. So I am in support of the council officers' recommendations to consider and endorse a fee increase as well as the promotional activities. The creche, with the proposed fee increase, is still expected to run at a loss, but it is now forecasted to be less than half of the $100,000 loss last financial year, perhaps even less. Eventually, I'd hope that this service can become as close as possible to cost neutral, and I am committed to councillors working alongside officers and Aligned Leisure, our provider, along with our community, and address this need. So in conclusion, councillors, I do seek your support tonight in noting the range of activities and endorsing the fee increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I will now go to Councillor Kowalczyk to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies. Although usage has dropped over the past 4 years, and I think Councillor Davies indicated this earlier with her question to Ms Lily Rosick, there obviously has been an improvement since it's reopened after COVID. I just want to quickly thank Councillor Davies on a personal note, who I've worked closely with in advocating for the Cardinia Life Creche to remain open. She's really led the charge on this, and I think that should be noted. In terms of alternatives that offer the same or similar services, well, there simply aren't any. Of other service providers, Best Chance is withdrawing from family daycare, and the Beaconsfield Neighbourhood House does not have any vacancies. Windermere service providers operate within Pakenham, but indicate that many carers require minimum attendance of 8 hours booking. An extension to the operation of the creche for now is a good result and means that families are not left without any options during the uncertainty of our recent times. However, and this is noted in the report, this is not a closed case. A further review will be undertaken in June 2022 because, as Councillor Davies recognised and highlighted, we simply can't sustain the current losses as they are. However, we do hope that will turn. I just want to briefly thank the officers and SLT for their hard work and their support of councillors with regard to this item. There has been a lot of debate This has been certainly one that was up in the air, but this result is pleasing to me. It's an extension for now with the review to come, and I think that's the most appropriate course of action. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. And do I have any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just want to also thank Councillor Davies and Councillor Kowalczyk. Obviously, this council had a petition which we responded to, which obviously has now seen this course of action of what's proposed before us. So it was pleasing. I was on hold trying to rearrange a make-up swimming lesson last week, and I heard the online promotions of the Creche, and I was very pleased, and I advised Councillor Davies of that. So it was really great to see we're doing more promotion of this service, which is really well and truly needed for families in Cardinia. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? There being none, I will go back to the mover to speak, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk and Councillor Owen, for your involvement in this also. It's truly been a team effort, and I also want to acknowledge Cardinia's officers. The staff have worked incredibly hard on this, this information is, whilst it's not exactly the news we want, saying, oh, we'll click our fingers and we'll get this financial and sustainable and continue it forever. I think we're on the right path to responsible governance. So well done to all. So tonight, councillors, I confirm that I seek your support in noting and endorsing the council officers' recommendations as are listed in the report. Thank you.
Councillors, I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along to item 6.2.4, Adoption of Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan 2021 to 2026, withdrawn by Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've withdrawn item 6.2.4, Adoption of Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan 2021 to 2026, and I would like to move the officer's recommendations that Council adopts the Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan 2021 to 2026. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. Back to you, Councillor Radford, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for seconding this item. Firstly, I just wanted to a huge thank you actually to Emily Tuck and Anne-Marie Saffin for preparing this report and for the outstanding work that they've put into with engaging with the community to ensure that everyone had the opportunity to participate in the development of this plan. The Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan 2021-2026 was developed through extensive community consultation, and it builds upon the learnings of the first plan. Cardinia Shire acknowledges our community as one that is diverse in age, culture, life experience, gender identity, race, I always get this word wrong, ethnicity, I can't say, you know what I mean, disability, faith, sexual orientation or other diversities. The Disability Strategy and Action Plan mirror this value in recognising that people with disability also experience diversity in many ways. The Strategy and Action Plan aligns with the Council Plan and Livability Plan and overlays the challenges people with disability encounter as they navigate their way through community life. This plan was developed with the invaluable contribution from residents, councillors, community organisations, service providers and council officers who shared their vision, knowledge and experiences during the consultation process and development of this plan. Council also expresses gratitude to the Cardinia Access and Inclusion Committee, whose members have been integral in the development of this plan. This committee was established in 2005 with objectives that included to monitor, review and support Council's disability policy, provide information and advice to Council on issues impacting upon people with a disability. As a delegate on this committee and a parent of a child with disability, I am very proud of the commitment and dedication all committee members gave to this committee and in representing the interests of people with disability in our Shire. There will be expressions of interest to join this committee, which will be open in January and February 2022, and there'll be more details to follow. The community engagement undertaken to develop this plan included face-to-face pop-up sessions right across the Shire, the Creating Cardinia webpage, online surveys and activities, face-to-face sessions at local primary schools where children submitted drawn images on how they thought access and inclusion could be improved, internal staff and councillor workshops to ensure that council's recruitment practices are inclusive and that vacancies reach people with disability. There were 655 comments and suggestions received as a result of this engagement. The findings found 3 strong themes evolved. These were livable places, creating accessible spaces and places, strong communities, an inclusive culture reflecting our diversity, independence, living, working and learning locally, and embedded in all 3 themes was the prevention of discrimination. The draft Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan was then again available for public exhibition for 4 weeks, asking the community if Council had understood their feedback and if the plan responds to the goal of improving access and inclusion for people with disability in Cardinia Shire. The draft was also translated and presented in an easy read format, extending the accessibility of information to all user groups. As a result of the public exhibition, no changes have been made to the draft document, and an operational disability action plan is included, detailing 52 items, timeframes and responsibilities to deliver the action plan, and this can be found in the attachments to this agenda item. So I'll finish for the moment and pass on to my seconder, please, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. I'll now go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Radford, for withdrawing this item. It's extremely important. Back in 2019, Cardinia Shire was the home to almost 4,000 residents with a disability. That makes up roughly 4.2% of the people living here. The amazing thing is, with projections being forecast, Cardinia Shire in 2030 is forecast to have 8,404 residents with a disability, an increase of 82%. More than 5,048 of those, all residents in Cardinia Shire, will be above the age of 65. Something quite unique about this is as we all get older, our body ages and we soon slow down. And injuries we may have from the past or things that start to break down will cause us to not be as free as we are now. People with frames, people with walking frames, people on scooters, wheelchairs, so forth. And with Cardinia Shire being an affordable living space, we need to be prepared for this, because in the past we haven't had a wave of people coming in like this ageing, and I know that we're going to go from a population increase. I think it's around 18% of people about 60 years of age and over to about 27% within the next 10 years. So therefore, Council will start reviewing the way that we do things in a lot of these areas to do with services. And I must say, this has been hard work for Council. I know over the last particularly probably 10 years at least I know of, where people have been dedicating more and more money. And it's very encouraging that state governments and federal governments are acknowledging this now and starting to put more money towards things like ramps, usable facilities, all abilities facilities like we've got in our area. I must say, when I first got on Council, there was no such thing as a all abilities swing. For us to put in down at the library an all abilities toilet was seen as a huge impost, you know, and it was seen, but now it's seen as just the thing that you do. So I must say we've made huge grounds on that. I think it's really good that this council acknowledges this and takes it seriously. I think it's really good that the councillors that are here take it seriously too, because that's what it's all about, putting your best foot forward. And this plan gives us a plan for the staff to work towards, and councillors a a reason to put funding out of our budget towards different things, and we can see what they're going to do through this plan. Anyway, I'm sure there's other councillors here who want to share some of the special things out of this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Radford. I went blank then. I do apologise. I can see straight ahead there, and Councillor Ross as well. This is a great plan. I think it's important that we don't push aside what disability really means. Disability is about how people see disability, and the people that usually have disabilities are a lot more wiser than what we are when it comes to what is needed. Simply walking down the street and there could be trees over the fence, whacking them in the face. I think we've got to look at the footpaths, we've got to look at roads and access across the roads. We've also got to look at access to accessible toilets and all the services they need. Using a wheelie frame and using a four-prong stick frame can be quite difficult when you're walking on a footpath because it gets in the grooves, and then your wheels and your four-prong stick doesn't move. So I think we're well aware. The team has worked really, really hard on this to look at what it means to have a disability and what it means to improve the access for people that do have problems just simply living life that is needed out there within our community. So I think this plan's really fantastic, and I'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Radford, for withdrawing this item. I have been privileged to also be a councillor delegate on the Access and Inclusion Committee, and it's been incredibly rewarding work. And I also want to thank very much the entire committee and council staff, Emily Tuck and Anne-Marie Saffin. Whilst it's not really something I dwell on, and it's certainly not something you'd know by looking at me, but I actually have a disability. And whilst I'm not wanting to be ableist here, I really want to show that disabilities are wide-ranging, and they don't mean that you can't, they don't restrict you on doing things, and they don't have to. And I really aspire to Cardinia to become a shire that that reinforces this for everyone. So to all members of our disability community, I'm one of you, and I'm behind you, and as is council. And I do want to just reiterate how important this work is. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll now go to Councillor Owen to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all to the other councillors for speaking on this very important item. What I really like about this document is obviously the 52 action items, and I think it provides a really good summary of what council will do in the life of this plan from 21 to 2026. With the old plan, pretty much all the action items were completed except for one. My understanding is it was along the lines of the new action item of 3.00. Council becomes a leading disability employment organisation, provide workplace opportunities, volunteering as well as paid work placement. So an action item similar to this new one wasn't able to be achieved. And I know, being a previous member of the Access and Inclusion Committee, that is definitely something that the committee wants to see council deliver on in this new plan. So I'll be monitoring that very closely, but this policy, this plan needs to be a whole of council working towards it. It's not just Anne-Marie and Emily, it's the whole of organisation trying to address these action items and achieving all of them. So that's what I really want to see, that this council really embrace, the whole of council embrace this document. It's really pleasing. In the years of my time on this council, we've seen almost every year increased budgets towards delivery of these plans, whether it's the access upgrades to our community facilities, and even this plan is seeing a increase in funding, and that's something we must continue to do. So I'm really pleased with this, and I'm looking forward to. I'm now back on the committee, which I'm looking forward to rejoining after a year absence. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? I will now go back to the mover, Councillor Radford, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all my fellow councillors for your words. Great comments. Councillor Owen, that this is a whole of council action. It is important that we are all in this together and working together. Disability can happen at any time to any of us, and not necessarily born with a disability. So it's important that we're building accessible and inclusive communities for everybody. People with disability are part of every segment of our community: women, men and children, employers and employees, students and teachers, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, customers, refugees and citizens. It is also important to note that no two people with the same disability experience their disability in the same way. The only thing that distinguishes a person with disability is they may require some form of adjustment to enable them to do certain things in the same way as people without a disability, and this achieves equity. Supporting the Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan, including the 52 operational items, ensures that Council will take steps to make products and services it delivers to the public more accessible and inclusive, as well as steps Council will take to make its corporate culture and practices more inclusive. So tonight I seek your support to adopt and implement the Access and Inclusion Disability Strategy and Action Plan 2021 to 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. I will now put this to a vote. All councillors in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that carried. Thank you. Next up is item 6.2.5, the Multicultural Hub Feasibility Study, withdrawn by Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that this council, 1, notes the Multicultural Feasibility Hub report and that funding would be required from other levels of government to build the hub. 2, advocates to other levels of government for funding to build the hub and refers this project to Council's 2022-23 capital budget for consideration. And 3, thanks Cardinia Shire's multicultural community, called network agencies and the Access and Inclusion Committee for their feedback and contribution to the feasibility assessment.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. Councillor Kowalczyk, if you'd like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for your second. I also saw Councillor Ryan too. Thank you very much. As I mentioned in the introduction of this item, the main purpose of bringing this before Council is to ratify the decision to seek alternative sources of funding. Funding for the feasibility study, which this report was written on the back of, was secured in early 2020 from the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications via Jason Wood. Advocating for funding to construct a multicultural hub in Cardinia Shire is included in the Council Plan 2021 to 25 as part of Priority 1, Strong Communities, in which we empower our communities to be healthy, connected and resilient. It is proposed that this future facility be managed under the same management model as is currently in place at Living Learning Pakenham, which actually operates as a not-for-profit. With regard to the construction, a staged approach is planned so as to limit the interruption to service as much as possible. That means that firstly, the new hub would be constructed on the street frontage, allowing the current Living and Learning Centre to remain operational. And secondly, once Living and Learning have been relocated into the new facility, the old building would be demolished and the new hall erected on that site. The estimated total cost to build the Multicultural Hub is $32 million. It is proposed that Council advocates to the Federal Government for $25 million towards the cost of building this. Our contribution would be subject to securing partnership funding due to the significant cost. I just want to encourage any interested community members to read the report, particularly the feasibility study, as it is a well-presented and thorough document which outlines the strong net benefit to the people and the economy of the Shire. In fact, the figures in the study present net value benefits over the next 30 years of approximately $24 million. One of the key recommendations from the consultation process was this be presented as an intercultural hub, with a focus on supporting the needs of Cardinia's core communities, but to be open and accessible to all. And as with any project being considered in today's climate, and with Cardinia Shire Council already having declared a climate emergency, Council's enhanced standard for sustainable buildings will be applied to the design of the Multicultural Hub. This will see a significant level of environmentally sustainable design incorporated into the facility. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll now go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk, for withdrawing this item. This is another area of real importance in Cardinia Shire as we change into the future. Back in 2016, we had 19% of Cardinia Shire's population were born overseas, and 7%, or approximately 7,000 people, were from non-English speaking countries, and 22% of our residents spoke a language other than English at home. Based on our population growth, it would not be unreasonable to expect the coal population to grow towards 15 to 20% to approximately 30 to 40,000 people by 2041. In line with the federal government's settlement transition engagement support plan, you need places that you can provide for residents who are new to Cardinia Shire. And as we had on the weekend, when we had our citizenship ceremonies, we had 3. And we've seen hundreds of people every month come to Cardinia Shire, and a lot of them are people who are from non-English speaking backgrounds. Some of this settlement program is to do with the acquisition of English language skills, supporting engagement with education and training, and building employment readiness with services complementing other settlement and mainstream services. It's really good that we can we're planning ahead in this area. Naturally, being such a huge project, we need support from federal and state governments to put this in. Residents couldn't be expected to fund that out of their rate money. But what we can do is we do have land, and we have wonderful not-for-profits in the area who just need bases to run these things out of. And as a council, that's our job, is to try and work through this issue and find these places that can be built. I must say, from past experience, wherever you build a space for a service group to come, they will come. It's like our youth facilities. On the days that we open in the beginning, you've probably got them 80% filled from day one, because people just need a space to come to. And people from different cultures too like to meet together. I must say, Living Learning run every year a really good called Community Day, where all the different cultures come together. They share with each other, and it's unique that in the same building they have some services. But they're going to need more than that, because as their children grow and as generations come out, they're going to even need more help. So anyway, I think this is a really good thing, the feasibility plan. It gives us an outline on where we're going with this, and it sort of gives us an idea on what the sort of support they'll need to. And this is a really, really important thing. Without a feasibility study, the likelihood of getting grant money is really, really small. Unless you have a plan and can join the dots for the people giving the money, it's not likely to go ahead. If you can join the dots, and the more work we do on our end, the more likelihood they're going to see a shovel-ready project or thereabouts, and they'll have an idea on what we're going to do. Anyway, as a second, I've gone well over. Anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? And Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I just wanted to add thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk, for presenting this. I think it's great, and we're all excited about this if it does go through. The study needs to be done so that clarity can be put to what the needs are, what the funding is needed, and so we can advocate even harder. The main benefit to this approach is the ability to provide services focused on the known needs of the multicultural community, whilst being open to anyone else within the community. This provides an environment where community connections can be built across all cultures and allow the broader funding and revenue streams to be accessed to make the hub more financially sustainable. I think that's really, really important. And multicultural is about everybody and welcoming everybody and learning from each other. We can all teach each other something so special from each culture that within our community. And we're very lucky in our community to even have the opportunity that this study has been conducted. So I will be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk, for drawing this item. It's a very special part of our meeting this evening. If you thought that this wasn't something that's important within our community, you would have to just go, as Councillor Ross mentioned, the citizenship ceremony that we, three of them we did on Sunday, highlighted the fact of how much we are across the board with all these different cultures across our council. And the Mayor was there presiding over the meetings on Sunday. I did note that the member for Latrobe got up and spoke very well, Jason Wood, about his passion for this multicultural hub that he's got in his mind at the moment and being supported by the community. So I congratulate him for bringing that up and putting it forward. And this study, feasibility study, will go towards making that happen, making that dream come true. And I'm sure we can see it across the board. I want to congratulate the community here, right across the board from all sorts of avenues, even our own council Shire. We had a survey here even about this, and it was included in the feasibility study. So we've had a cross section, even the playgroups, the younger people. It's interesting to see what they thought that what this multicultural hub would need. So it's not just one group. It's not any group in specific. It's right across our council community. So. I think it's a really great idea, and I think this feasible study is a great document. I implore everybody, all our members of the public, to read this study and really get a grip on what we're looking forward to in the future. So I'm looking forward to this happening. So I fully support it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to the mover to summarise. Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Councillors Ross, Ryan and Moore, for your support and for speaking to this item. This project, as exciting as it is, the reality is it cannot proceed without external funding, and that's essentially where we're at tonight and what we're asking for from councillors. We're asking for councillors to support us as an organisation to go out and seek that funding. It was touched on some of the numbers of residents who are from core backgrounds, and that's growing every day. And it's going to be so great to have a facility that can cater to everyone and house the specialised services that are required within Cardinia. Not Casey, not Dandenong, but actually in Cardinia. It's also nice to see local groups such as the Men's Shed and other groups potentially being housed and being able to use this space, which I think is really important and brings that intercultural approach of bringing everyone together in one space. It's my belief that Cardinia Shire's community would benefit greatly from having a facility such as this, not only from its main function as a place where community can come together and support one another, but also from an economic point of view. And I touched on this before. The study presents net value benefits over the next 30 years of approximately $24 million. So just let that soak in. That's a lot of money. I hope my fellow councillors support this as one of our commitments from our council plan. Thank you, Mayor Springfield.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I will now put this to a vote. All councillors in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along to item 6.2.6, Sealing the Hills, Stoney Creek Road, Upper Beaconsfield Catchment Special Charge Scheme, withdrawn by Councillor Ross. Oh, sorry. Councillor Owen, sorry.
Thanks for your interest, Councillor Ross, but I'll take that one. Thank you, Mayor. I move the following, that Council, 1, acknowledge the majority landowner support as set out in this report to contribute to the construction of Burton Road, Morris Road and Young Street, Upper Beaconsfield, as shown in Attachment 2, including sealed pavement, curb and channel and associated drainage and incidental works. 2, approve the assessment of the benefit ratio for the proposed special rate and charge scheme as set out in Attachment 3 of this report. 3, adopt the proposed area of the scheme and method of apportionment as set out in Attachments 2 and 4 respectively. 4, give notice of intention to declare a special charge scheme in accordance with the proposed declaration set out in Attachment 5 to fund the construction of Burton Road, Morris Road and Young Street in Upper Beaconsfield. 5, consider the declaration, Attachment 5, at its meeting of 21st March 2022 or such later date as necessary. 6, appoint the Mayor and or Ward Councillor and General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment as a council committee with a quorum of 1 to consider submissions received to Section 223 of the Local Government Act with respect to this scheme. 7, authorise the General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment to determine the administrative arrangements to enable submissions to be heard and considered. And finally, 8, approve the public notice as set out in the Attachment 6 to be advertised in the Pakenham Berwick Gazette and the Hills Trader as newspapers that service the area. So I move so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen, and my apologies. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Cameron. I'll go back to you, Councillor Owen, to speak to this item.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cameron. I just wanted to read out that because it is a process and it's such an important process, all these schemes, and there's other 2 roads coming up tonight as well that we'll be voting on later. But this report proposes giving notice of intention to declare a special charge scheme to part fund the construction of Burton Road, Morris Road and Young Street in Upper Beaconsfield. This notice begins the formal consultation process as the commencement of the statutory process that enables Council to levy a special charge. The Stoney Creek Road, Upper Beaconsfield Catchment, is included in the Australian Government-funded Sealing the Hills program, which is a great program. It includes landowners will receive special benefit as a result of the works, including improved resident amenity, reduction in dust and associated health issues, improved drainage, less wear and tear on vehicles, reduced road maintenance costs and overall improved livability. And we do know this catchment in particular is in the centre of Upper Beaconsfield, and particularly Young Street has over 20 houses that will benefit, and it's quite a short street really, but it has over 20 houses that will benefit from this scheme. So the preliminary estimated costs of the proposed works is $2,235,000, of which $381,000 is proposed to be funded via the proposed special charge contributions received from residents and landowners. This will leave approximately a balance of $1.8 million to be funded from the Australian Government grant. So property owner contributions have been assessed on the basis of the benefit gained by each existing developed or vacant allotment, capped at $7,000 per benefit unit. So that's all that residents will be contributing, $7,000 for each benefit unit. Council special rate and charges policy provides for levies to be paid in quarterly instalments that include principal and interest. For the Sealing the Hills program, it has decided that a maximum 7-year payment period be adopted. The financial hardship provisions of this policy provides further relief to those owners demonstrating genuine financial hardship, and definitely I do encourage any residents in that position to have that conversation with council, and I'm sure arrangements can be made that's acceptable to each landowner. So a survey was sent out to property owners, 54 in total, asking whether they would support contributing to a special charge scheme capped at $7,000 per benefit unit. So very good response. Of the 54 properties surveyed, Council received 36 responses. Out of 54, we received 36 responses, or 65%. 31, or 85% of those responses indicated support to contributing to the scheme, while 15% indicated opposition. Support for the scheme was consistent across all 3 roads surveyed. Following consideration of the survey responses, a special charge scheme has been prepared to part fund the construction of Burton Road, Morris Road and Young Street in Upper Beak. So this is a really good response, acceptance from residents. I do appreciate they have to contribute $7,000, but if we weren't getting this Australian government grant, typically, such schemes would require probably something over $20,000 per, benefit unit. So it is very, in my view, reasonable, and this is, why we're going to really make a difference in sealing, over 100 roads over the next 10 years through this program. And as I said before, there's so many benefits, whether it's, less dust, less wear and tear on people's vehicles, and just amenity is so much better, particularly in those residential properties that are quite close to each other. So I move so, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll now go to the seconder, Councillor Cameron, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'd just like to reserve my right to speak at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? So I'll go back to you if you would like to speak, reserving your right, but you don't have to add anything if you don't have anything further to add. That's totally up to you. No. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Owen, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just in conclusion, so it is concluded that the majority of property owners support the construction of Burton Road, Morris Road and Young Street Upper Beaconsfield, and that Council should commence the formal consultation process to initiate a special charge scheme by proceeding to give notice of its intention to declare a special charge to part fund the works. As I said earlier, it's the second scheme in Upper Beaconsfield in this road program. There's a few more to come in Upper Beaconsfield, which is great, but this will make a huge difference. And this is abutting the Upper Beaconsfield Rec Reserve, almost abutting the primary school at Upper Beaconsfield. So there's so many wider community benefits to this scheme, and it's not just the residents, it's that wider community benefit for the whole of Upper Beaconsfield. So I support same. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. And I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along to item 6.2.9, Reconciliation Action Plan, withdrawn by Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council adopts the Cardinia Shire's I move that Council adopts the Cardinia Shire Council's Reconciliation Action Plan and the Statement of Reconciliation and Acknowledgement of Country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Radford. I'll now go back to the mover to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Radford, also for seconding my motion. So Cardinia's 3 traditional Aboriginal owner groups weren't formally defined until recently. The land was under dispute. And in June this year, June 2021, the Victorian Aboriginal Heritage Council, the VAHC, named Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri the traditional owners, the registered Aboriginal parties for our Shire. In this, it was also recognised that the Boonwurrung people's connection to the land was also acknowledged. However, they are not recognised as a distinct registered Aboriginal party within Cardinia. So that's just some update. So the first part of this report refers to the Reconciliation Action Plan. In 2015, Cardinia Shire Council endorsed its first Reconciliation Action Plan and publicly committed to 23 key actions over a 4-year period, 2015 to 2019. The new plan that we're endorsing tonight, hopefully, was developed under Reconciliation Australia's Innovate guidelines, and it encouraged the organisations to reach their own unique reconciliation visions, focusing on aspirational and innovative commitments towards reconciliation. So as part of this, a 2-year timeframe is set, And this new plan will cover the 1 January 2022 to 31 December 2023 period with 21 actions and 72 deliverables. I am advised that extensive community consultation has taken place throughout 2019 and 2020 and included discussions with all three of the aforementioned traditional owner groups, relevant stakeholders, community members and Council's own internal departments. The second aspect of this report is the Statement of Reconciliation and Acknowledgement of Country. And recently, in March 2021, at our council briefing, it was agreed that it was appropriate to acknowledge all three traditional owners active in Cardinia, the Wurundjeri, Boonwurrung and Boonwurrung people. But the subsequent advice received by the VAHC decision, it meant that this could no longer be the case. So the document that under consideration tonight has reverted to the existing acknowledgement of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri people that was previously in place. Attached to our council report, the Acknowledgement of Country document provides guidance for council staff and councillors on the appropriate acknowledgement practice to be used in our Shire. It also explains the difference between an acknowledgement of country, which is an opportunity of anyone to show respect to the traditional owners, their continuing contributions and connection to country. It can be given by both non-Indigenous and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And this is different to a welcome to country. These can only be delivered by the original custodians of the land where the meeting or event is taking place. Cardinia has dedicated staff that can organise for this with either the Boonwurrung Land Council or the Wurundjeri Cultural Heritage Council if needed. And councillors, you'll note that our Mayor read our standard acknowledgement at the start of tonight's meeting, but I will repeat it now for noting. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands of Cardinia Shire, the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. We are also allowed to and encouraged you to modify that slightly to make it resonate more with yourself. And I have heard some great ones by various people, including how Indigenous Australians are the oldest living Indigenous culture worldwide. So this is for councillors to note and endorse tonight. And councillors, I seek your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I will now go to the seconder, Councillor Radford, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Davies, for withdrawing this item. I just wanted to highlight the internal consultation that took place at Cardinia Shire and as an organisation. There were two standouts from that review, which included feedback that reconciliation should receive high or higher priority across the organisation. That was 80% of respondents. And the success of the cultural awareness training, with feedback saying this had been transformational for many staff. Some staff have also called for more training or workshops that they wish to access with their teams to increase their awareness of local heritage and living culture. And I thought that was really important to highlight because that's really important when developing our council plans, that we have a good understanding. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies and Councillor Radford. I'll be brief. I just wanted to mention the 4 focus areas that are contained within Cardinia Shire Council's Reconciliation Action Plan, that each have actions and deliverables that Councillor Davies mentioned that form a part of those focus areas. So they include relationships, respect, opportunities, and focus area 4 is leadership, implementation, tracking and progress reporting, which I think is really important. Now, obviously, we know that fulfilling this plan will require a whole of council approach. However, it's pleasing to see the way that Cardinia's RAP document lays out each action with a deliverable, a timeline for it to be achieved in, and who's responsible for ensuring it stays on track within the organisation. I think that's laid out really clearly, and that's impressive to see. So thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Before going back to the the mover, I'll just say a few words and just share my words of support. I think it's important that across all organisations in our nation that we take on this reconciliation action plan and develop their own action plans to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our full and deep respects to the First Nations people of Australia. So thank you, councillors. I will now go back to Councillor Davies to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield, for your support of this work, and thank you also Councillor Radford and Councillor Kwasik, both who raised the quality of the specific content, the consultation and the goals and the structure. It's very high quality, and I do want to acknowledge this also and thank the council officers for their work. Councillors, tonight I seek your support in endorsing the officers' recommendations as noted in the officers' report. These being that Council adopts the Cardinia Shire Council's Reconciliation Action Plan and Council's Statement of Reconciliation and Acknowledgement of Country. Thank you.
Councillors, I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along to item 6.2.11, the Cora Reserve New Change Rooms project is withdrawn by Councillor Cameron. Councillor Cameron, you have a motion that differs from the officer's recommendation. Can you move your motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that Council refers the Cora project to the 22-23 budget for consideration and seeks federal government funding to implement the redevelopment of the project. That Council proceed to final design of the facility with the Reserve Committee and user groups, and thanks the Reserve Committee and user groups for working with Council on the project and advises them of Council's resolution.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. I'll go back to Councillor Cameron to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Just in a bit of a history, the Cora Recreation Reserve is Crown land owned by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning and managed by a Community Committee of Management appointed under the Crown Land Reserves Act. In 2018, Council was successful in receiving a community sport infrastructure loan of $4,226,000 for a new social rooms, change rooms and canteen facility at Cora Reserve. The scope was further revised after discussion with the Reserve Committee and user groups, and to comply with Council's sports facility standards, subsequently Council requested a reduction of the state government loan to $2,510,000 for just the construction of change rooms and public toilets. The loan amount to build the redevelopment was calculated using the initial quantity survey report for a concept plan developed in 2020. The project has incurred unforeseen costs escalation due to the need for significant site service upgrades, Melbourne water requirements and COVID-19 escalation costs. To address the on-site conditions and Melbourne water requirements, a redesign was required that changed the external layout of the building, enhanced access ways and established a viewing platform. The cost estimate received was significantly above the available budget for the project. Council officers reconsidered a modular build. This option was presented to user groups and the Reserve Committee for consideration, and feedback remained strongly opposed to a modular build. As a consequence, 6 options were put to the user groups and to the committee, and all options are likely to be greater than the state government loan amount for this project of $2,510,000. Option 1, that being a modular build, would be closest to the loan amount. As a consequence to none of the groups using the Cora Club facilities wanting to have a modular build, it's recommended that Council endorse option 7, that being put the project on hold and seek federal government grant funding to implement the agreed project. The Reserve Committee and Cora Football Club, as I said, do not support the modular construction or the reduced room sizes. Council is unable to complete the improvements at Coralline Reserve without the approval of the Reserve Committee of Management and DELP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll now go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cameron, for your proposed alternate motion. I must say, this is only when single ward councillors get involved with different groups, they get to find out intently all the different views from the people who live in the area. I think Councillor Cameron's done a good job to listen to these people, and I think for the options that they want to explore for their project, they're going to need definitely some federal government money. A lot of our other projects in the area have received government funding in the past in relation to, it might be an election promise, it might be through a grant scheme or something else. So anyway, Council has supported, they haven't supported yet. People have to vote on it, that we do go and seek some extra funding for this project so that they can have what they have in mind, something that they could be happy with as a facility. I think that's half the issue with projects that I've seen. If you really own it and if you're part of it, you'll enjoy it a whole lot more than something if you get given it and then you're not really happy with it. You'll always look at it and think you've been a little bit underdone. But anyway, I think this is a good way of looking forward. We'll see how we go. And I suppose with the federal election coming, you never know your luck. A lot of people have received things in the past, and I know that in Cardinia Shire, when you do receive funding, it is well spent, because we do deliver on our projects, and our projects do look fantastic when they're completed. So anyway, I'm going to approve this. I think it does need some more funding if they can get it to fulfil what their expectations are. Anyway, I hope my fellow councillors support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I will vote to support Councillor Cameron in her alternative motion tonight. The key difference in this alternative motion is that the project is now being referred to the 22-23 council budget for consideration, as opposed to what the council officers had suggested, which was to put the project on hold. In both approaches, council officers will be applying for federal government grant funding to implement the redevelopment project. And most significantly, this alternative motion does not impact the prioritisation process and needs assessment applied for council's capital expenditure. I commend Councillor Cameron for her work with her constituents, and I do hope that federal funding is attracted for the user groups of this reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to support Councillor Cameron's alternative motion as well as. This has been challenging. The challenges we have as councillors is to try and give our residents, and particularly these sporting clubs, what they need and what they require to operate with the funding we've got before us to be able to do that. And sometimes that's very hard to achieve. But under this circumstance, I know that this club, Coralline, are a very strong club. They've got a very strong committee, and I know that their connections that they can have with the local government will enable them to have what they want in the end, I'm sure. So with our help, with the funding available outside our budgeting, I think that they will get what they need. I know that the negativity that's received from our community with this modular type system, because it's not a real home, it's not what you call a traditional construction type facility, and that sort of makes it a bit more temporary, it seems. But really these modular type systems, we've visited them and had a look at these modular systems, and they are really a quality build these days. And so if they come to the fortune that the modular system would work, we could do that straight away. But unfortunately, we've got this challenge between the rec reserve, the football club, and what we can fund it for. So the alternative is to do this alternative motion. So I fully support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Cameron, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Since the initiation of the project, many unforeseen challenges have arisen, including several site constraints, additional authority and service requirements, and those arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, all delaying the project's process. 7 options to implement this project have been developed for council consideration, with only one option estimated to be close to the loan budget. And that is an option that neither the football club nor the grounds committee agree on. It's recommended that council also endorse option 7 to put the project on hold and seek federal government funding to implement the redevelopment and progress further discussions with the reserve committee and user groups. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Next up is item 6.2.12, Gender Equality Update, withdrawn by Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council stays informed of Cardinia's commitment and progress towards gender equity within the organisation and community in general.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryan. Back to you, Councillor Ross, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a really important motion that was put up in relation to gender equality, because we need to keep it front and centre all the time. It needs to be something that we need to acknowledge and continue that, there has been issues in the past in this area. We as Cardinia Shire Council take it very seriously. We see it as a leader in the community to try and get this right and trying to give everyone an opportunity, regardless of your gender. I think that we do it remarkably well. If you were to wander around our council staff, you would see that both genders are well represented. I must say something that we need to continue to do is to continue to look into best practice in this area to try and work out ways we can improve things. I must say, as I've always mentioned in the past, from my experience, people of the female, women have been outstanding when they apply for positions. I must say they've been underrepresented in the past in the way of general managers, executive officers, and the roles further up the chain. From my experience, the women who go for these roles are absolutely outstanding. There's a lot of people out there who really don't rate themselves quite as highly as they should, and I'd encourage them to have a go and go out there and apply for jobs. Because there's a whole lot of roles out there, and with 51% of the population being female, we need to have things through the eyes of all genders to have a true understanding of what we should do in this space. I know all of us around this room have experienced over time where injustices have happened, and we struggle to understand. I'd like to think that we're a generation that is going to make things right. We're going to try and even things up, and it's the best person who will get opportunities. And I know with bringing this up every month, I'm always interested to hear my fellow councillors, to hear their take on it and what they envisage and what they find in life in this journey. Anyway, I'll hand it over for someone else to share. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll reserve my right to speak at the moment. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors? Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for withdrawing this item. I wanted to just highlight, as part of this report, that the 2021 White Ribbon fundraiser and award ceremony took place on Thursday, the 25th of November. And this is a partnership between Council, Outlook and Aligned Leisure to deliver this fundraiser. And all 3 organisations are White Ribbon accredited and together are taking a stand against family violence. There was a special guest speaker, Phil Cleary, at this event, event, who sadly his sister was killed by domestic violence in the 80s. He was a great speaker. It was a great and well organised event. The shocking stats from that event is that 1 woman a week is still killed due to violence from a man. And that just shocks me, and there's still a lot of work to do. So the Gender Equality Action Plan will take into account the impact of gender equality on family violence and abuse, and ensure its strategies and measures support councils and the White Ribbon Foundation's efforts in working towards a community free from family violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford, and I was there at that event. It was a wonderful event. Thank you. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? I'll go back to Councillor Ryan to see if she would like to speak to this item now.
I would, Mayor, thank you, through you. I think this is really important that we acknowledge this. It's something that has been horrific for many, many years, and during the times that I had worked in ED, I saw a lot of women come through that were physically abused and the trauma that they go through. And we've come a long way since then, and I'd like to say that, you know, we're going to keep moving forward. And as you would notice, that all of us councillors have our white ribbon on us, and we wear that continually wherever we go, because it's an important sign to verify that we believe that we're doing something that's so important in our community. And it also gives women the courage to know that they've got the support and that we're trying to implement a safe environment for them to live in. There's also a program that I was involved in called Making Changes, and it was aimed for women who had been abused, and it shows you the signs to look for that first off when someone approaches you, and how you should handle that, whether someone's within your personal space or not, and how you would handle it. And it's a really great program, and I'd like to see, you know, hopefully we might get that program, if possible, down this way, that, you know, more information that we can find out about this program. But everything we want to do, we're getting there, and thanks to the team as well. They've worked really hard on this, and thanks to the councillors for supporting it as well, and I'll be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Ross, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Radford, for sharing in this space. I must say, this has really come forward so far. I can remember going back probably 17 or 18 years ago when I used to work as a union organiser in the meat industry, and I would talk to meat workers in abattoirs about domestic violence and violence against women and gender equity. And it was like you were talking another language until you actually pointed out that 1 in 8 of you actually do this. And they look at each other and I go, so if there's 40 in the room, there's 5 of you. And I'd say there might even be more depending upon the ratio. And there are services that can help you. And we went from them probably having a culture and a background of not understanding these things might be wrong, to now I think everybody is becoming aware of gender, I suppose, abuse in the past. And it doesn't have to be physical, it can be mental abuse. And sometimes that's even more harrowing than physical abuse, because it can go on and on and on. Anyway, I think as a council, it is great that we talk about this issue. We are accredited. I can remember when there was no accreditations for businesses at all. People used to go and get your accreditation or whatever, which I got one back then. But I must say, as an organisation, we really, really take it seriously, particularly with our Together We Can program, which I think has won a national award and set a benchmark in that area. Anyway, thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak about this. Thank you, other councillors, for sharing in this space. And I continue to look forward to hearing more about what we're doing in this space. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Next item is item 6.3.1, Cardinia Shire's Livability Plan 2017 to 2019, withdrawn by Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. I move the following. That Council 1, note the findings of the Livability Plan Review 2021 and endorse the changes to the Livability Plan 2017 to 29. And 2, endorse the CEO or her delegate to submit the Cardinia Shire's Livability Plan 2017 to 29 to the Department of Health as required under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryan. I'll go back to the mover to speak to this item.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ryan, for your second. Council's Livability Plan has been reviewed in line with our responsibility under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008. It is now being presented to Council for endorsement prior to being submitted to the Department of Health. Every 4 years a review takes place, and that's so important not only as a legal requirement, but so the Council can remain adaptable to the changing needs of our community, our local environment and our economy. The full list of changes can be found within the report, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are a few that I just quickly want to highlight. The inclusion of tackling climate change and its impact on health within the framework. This inclusion is an overarching element within the document, and it shows the need for climate change to be considered across the entire plan. And we saw Council's focus on this earlier in the night's proceedings via the adoption of the Cardinia Biolink plan. There was a renaming of the outcome area, reduce financial vulnerability, to increase financial wellbeing and resilience. This helps to shift focus from the problem to the solution. There's also been additional information added to outline the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns on health and wellbeing throughout the Shire. There are 7 key long-term outcomes that we hope to achieve on the back of this plan. Improve the mental health and wellbeing for our residents. Improve social cohesion. Improve safety, improve healthy eating and active living, reduce family violence, improve financial wellbeing and resilience, and reduce harm from tobacco, alcohol, drugs and gambling. Now that's pretty big stuff, and it's an ambitious plan, it's a detailed plan, but it's one that I think all Cardinia Shire residents can be proud of. All those outcomes I mentioned are very important, but I do want to briefly hone in on outcome 6, improve financial wellbeing and resilience. For those who don't know, financial literacy is the ability to understand and effectively use various financial skills, including managing personal finances, budgeting and investing. Financial resilience is the ability to withstand life events that impact one's income and or assets. Now, I don't know about everyone else, but oftentimes people wish they had those skills a lot earlier in life. A lot of times those skills come to people a lot later in life, and one of the outcomes that we hope to do is change that in young people and in women. That's really important for Cardinia Shire's residents. We know this area has a huge effect on the quality of life for everyone, as well as a big impact on all other outcome areas, namely mental health, family violence and safety. It's an area that traditionally doesn't get enough focus, but there is an increasing awareness of the importance of education and early intervention. I'm really pleased to see the strategies that have come out of this, and I'm proud that Council will prioritise this now and into the future. 6.2.2, I really want to read this out, it's important. Generate and support community conversations about improving personal financial literacy, especially for women and young people. I'm really proud that Council is going to support that. So I'll go to my fellow councillors. I'm sure there's lots of highlights that people want to bring up, but I'm glad we got the chance to mention that tonight. It's very, very important. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I will go to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I think this is really important, and you've mentioned some of the workshops, the 7 workshops that were very, very important. This review for the Livable Plan is always important to review and update and change if need be change. And one of the things that I want to bring up is the outcome of number 1, improve mental health and wellbeing. It's a very strong passion of mine, and we've got it to the Livable Plan now, and which is fantastic. So good mental health and wellbeing is more than just an absence of mental illness. A positive state of the mental health and wellbeing is about feeling good, being able to cope with life's stresses, and an ability to work productively individual potential and the ability to contribute to family and community life. Increasing the resilience of the communities to the adverse climates impacts and increasing the ability to cope and adjust to future climate hazards. I think some of the percentages, and I just want to read just a small amount of the percentages. 20.3% of adults experience high or very high level psychological distress, compared to 23.5% of Victorians. 40% of women and 19% of men report ever being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, compared to 34% and 21% of Victorians. There is 3,981 total hospitalisations per 100,000 people relating to mental health issues in 2020. These hospitalisations were highest among 18 to 24-year-olds, followed by 65 plus age group. Hospitalisation for self-harm show that females 82.8% in 100,000 are much more likely to be admitted than males. However, the suicide death rate is higher among men, and it always has been over many, many years. Nationally, male suicide deaths amount for approximately 3 in 4 deaths. There is 100 emergency department presentations related to mental health per 10,000 people. I think that percentage is really, really important. But I'm happy to say that with this livable plan, we've worked really, really hard. The team's worked really, really hard to bring it to this stage, and it can only get better. And it's all about breaking down the stigma. So I think the mental health and wellbeing was a really important policy to get in here in the livable plan. So again, I thank the team and everyone that was involved. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do any other councillors, would they like to speak to this item? Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk, for withdrawing this item. I just wanted to highlight the consultation that was taken to develop and revise the livability plan. There were 2 stakeholder workshops which were held in August to revise the objectives and strategies of the plan for the next 4 years. This was attended by more than 130 participants, which included councillors, council staff, partner organisations and community leaders, and they all worked on the themed around the 7 outcome areas of the livability plan, which Councillor Kowalczyk mentioned earlier. The results from these workshops directly informed the objectives and strategies within this draft livability plan review, and I participated in both of those myself, and I was really impressed with how the council officers organised these forums. They had to be online, not in person like they were the first time round in 18, so I was really impressed at how engaging they still were online, and they definitely got some great results from that. There was also a public exhibition with a number of submissions received through the Creating Cardinia website, a written submission, and then 6 submissions were received directly by the Healthy Communities team. So I just really wanted to highlight the consultation with the community done by the council officers under challenging circumstances. I think they've done a really great job, and I'm really proud of the draft livability plan that they've come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Before going back to the mover, I'll just note that we had an event last week to launch this livability plan. It was a wonderful event, and it was great to see members of community there and the People's Panel that had been contributing to this, as well as the youth People's Panel. It was a really wonderful event. So it was great to see community getting behind a new plan, a new direction for our future. So thank you. I'll now go back to Councillor Kowalczyk to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. As always, a big thank you goes to our council staff for their efforts and hard work for creating a great outcome. Really great review was undertaken, and we picked up some really important themes that otherwise would have been missed. And I think I and other councillors have touched on them before, but certainly the COVID-19 pandemic was really important to include in that review. Thanks to Councillor Radford for highlighting the consultation that occurred, as well as Councillor Ryan for spotlighting outcome 1, improving mental health among our residents. The final Livability Plan Review 2021 has been prepared following public exhibition of the draft document during October. Subject to endorsement by Council, which I trust will follow shortly, the updated Livability Plan 2017 to 29 will be submitted to the Department of Health. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes discussion of the items withdrawn. Are there any matters listed in the agenda that any councillors would also like to debate? If there is not, can I please have a mover to adopt the officer's recommendations for the remaining items? Councillor Kowalczyk, and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore. Councillors, all those in favour? I declare that carried. Thank you. Councillors' report. Councillors, are there any matters that you wish to report on? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned, I think just before, Mayor, by yourself, we did have the launch of the Community Vision and Council Plan on the 3rd of December. It was a really great event. Thank you to all the staff involved, but it was fantastic. It was uplifting. It was great to see the many people who contributed to that massive piece of work during very difficult times, come together, including some young people from our primary schools, including Beaconsfield Primary was there, but the People's Panel representatives. It was just really great to acknowledge them, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to be part of that sort of ceremony, being the outgoing mayor that was involved in that process. So it was just a really great day, so well done to all involved. On the same day, we had the International Day of People with a Disability. What a great forum that was, Councillor Radford, and I know you'll probably talk about it as well, but it was just great. Great guest speaker, Bo, very uplifting. Talk by our guest speaker who obtained his disability after a very serious football injury, but what he's done since, and he's aiming for our next Olympics, that's something he's aiming for. But it was great also to hear from Michael Wright, who was MC, who's also on our committee, Access and Inclusion, very uplifting as well. But it was a really great forum. Just want to acknowledge 95% of our community that are eligible have received their second dose of vaccination. That's a great result. Over 95% fully vaccinated. That's great. I'm booked in for my third jab tomorrow. I'm very happy about that. So thank you to all those residents who are doing their bit. The Cardinia Foundation, I'm one of the directors along with the CEO. Fantastic. Despite the challenging circumstances of COVID and the inability to raise fundraising, that foundation recently met and had a grant program, had 27 grant applications. The board has accepted 13 to the total of over $60,000. So in the coming year, in the new year, there'll be a presentation of eligible recipients of that grants. And in the coming months, there'll be a report that will come to council regarding the changes of the Cardinia Foundation. So a report will come to a future council meeting. But I think that was really great. Over $60,000 given back to the community by the foundation. And finally, just want to acknowledge last week, the Beaconsfield Wood Street Kinder celebrated 50 years in our community. So unfortunately, COVID, they weren't able to run a big event, but 50 years since Wood Street Kindergarten has been around. So they've done a little small thing, and we also obviously see the retirement of Jeanette Bartlett, a long-term teacher, early years educator at Wood Street. She was recognised as well at that event. So that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other councillors would like to speak? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Just a couple of things that I want to mention to everyone here tonight. A couple of weeks ago, I attended the White Ribbon Gallery event at the Cardinia Cultural Centre with our Mayor, Councillor Radford and Councillor Moore. The theme of the artwork that was on display was domestic violence is isolating. I just want to thank everyone involved. It was pretty powerful, the artists and the organisers. There was also a really powerful speaker there, a victim survivor who was on the day and also shared some of her poetry. So I just wanted to say thank you to her. I visited the Berwick-Pakenham Historical Society with my wife Sarah and our kids. So I just want to thank Elizabeth Fraser, who was a volunteer who was there on the day and gave us a tour. Really fantastic spot in the middle of Pakenham. If people don't know about it, I encourage you to reach out to the Berwick-Pakenham Historical Society and take the time to go and visit. They're open there on a Sunday as long as you give them a bit of notice. So I really think people would get a lot out of that, and I hope people are aware of that spot right in the middle of town. I also attended the opening of the Puffing Billy Lakeside Visitor Centre with our Mayor and Councillor Moore. Fantastic new facility there, which is open now, and all trains are running right on time and right on schedule, and they got the full list going through. So that was pretty impressive to see, and obviously there was a lot of federal and state money involved in that project. So a very impressive centre. And lastly, being the last opportunity to speak publicly in the chambers before we have a little bit of a break, I just want to wish everyone a safe and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and holiday period. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll go to Councillor Radford next.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, there's been a number of events happening because of the restrictions easing. We've been able to get out and about, and so I'll just highlight a couple that haven't already been highlighted. It was really good to attend the citizenship ceremonies on Sunday. There were 3 ceremonies held. Just over 200 people, I think, took their oath and became Australian citizens, and that is just a pleasure to be a part of that special day with those people. And there were a number of other councillors present, our Mayor, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Moore and Councillor Ross. And I think it was well run, and I always love going to these events. I've been to 2 AGMs, local AGMs, which is the Officer District Community Association and the Officer Union Church. They both had their AGMs, and I'd like to congratulate the volunteers who have put up their hands again to be on these committees, and they do a wonderful job. I'd like to encourage anybody in Officer to check these committees out, and get involved, because they really do a lot for our community. And as I said, they've been the same volunteers for many years now, and so I'd like to see some of our new residents in Officer putting up their hand and joining in with these committees as well. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Any other councillors? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. It's always great, isn't it, to get out and with our community, sharing with our councillors together as a group. And it was really an honour to be at the citizenship ceremonies on the weekend, on Sunday. And of course, our CEO, Carol Jeffs, was there also on the Sunday, giving her Sunday away as well, and we appreciated you being there, CEO. I'd just like to mention just one thing. The Garfield Christmas Festival was on Friday night. Against all the odds to have a Christmas festival this time of year with COVID, what we've had, and this committee worked hard to make it work somehow. And so they had it in the rec reserve there so they could control people coming and going, and the QR codes, and it was really good. And I know the staff behind the scenes helped this committee get this down on the ground. And so it was great to see the community out on the football ground, kicking footballs around, having a picnic with all the food vendors and things on the night, and fireworks at the end of the night. So great to see. I really enjoyed the night being there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I'll go to Councillor Ryan next.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Yes, I was at the launch too, and one of the things that I found was really, really interesting. They had Lego building there, and I remember my children playing Lego, and I was never very good at building things then, and I was not good enough building on the day of the launch. There was also a kookaburra there, so I had my photo taken with the kookaburra, and the carer said that he seemed to like me more than her because he was leaning against me and wanted to cuddle. But I wasn't real keen on the idea of the python, so I decided not to handle the python. I'm just not into snakes. Remembrance Day, of course, the majority of us would have attended Remembrance Day, and I went back to the Pakenham RSL for lunch and met up with some of the veterans there and heard some of their stories and what they're doing now in the community, which is really, really positive. And Councillor Moore and myself went to an event called Leader of the Pack. And it brought back some 60s, 70s and 80s music. Well, if we had the opportunity to get up on stage, we would have been there, but we were pretty much up dancing in our seats, singing along. Now, this was run by the Hillcrest Christian College is where we went, and the students, most of them were learning on video. So it was the first time them coming together and doing the show. I think it's really fantastic that our youth can do that, and a show it was absolutely brilliant. And then I was lucky enough to meet up with them later on at the local hotel, and they were all celebrating, so I told them how good they were. No, you missed out. You didn't come along. And last but not least, Christmas decorations. I'd love to thank the 4 women that take their time out of their personal life and spend their own money on Christmas decorations for the Pakenham Main Street. Last year, 3 times they put the Christmas decorations up and they were stolen. So this year we're hoping that they stay there, and I really appreciate what the ladies have done because, and it's getting the community involved and also the shop assistants as well, the retailers, and getting them to do their windows. And I think, everyone should just, if someone doesn't have any decorations or has decorations at home they're not using, encourage them to donate them, because that's what we've done. And I think that's really important. And I'm going to be a bit silly tonight, and I'm going to wish everyone Merry Christmas and Happy New Year until I come back with all the other councillors. So have a safe one. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor. On Saturday night, I was fortunate enough to attend the Kuirup Carols by Candlelight, and as council helped to sponsor this Carols by Candlelight evening, I'm wanting to pass on their gratitude for council's help with the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Would any other councillors like to report on anything? There being none, I might just take the moment myself to wish everyone a really happy Christmas and safe New Year's, as others have, because this will be our last council session before we move into the festive season and the holiday period, and we'll be back. We'll be working hard still over the whole break, I imagine, because that's what we do as councillors. But just wishing everyone to have a very safe and happy New Year's. This is not the end of the meeting, though. It feels like I'm ending it, but I'm not. I just wanted to add something in there. Moving along to presentations of petitions. Councillor Moore, I understand that you have a petition you wish to table.
Matter of fact, I have, Mayor. It's an honour that I'm able to table this petition for 52 local concerned residents of a certain problem. It's up in the Pine Hill Drive area of Pakenham, where the Pakenham East proposed railway station is going to be placed, and there's a petition of 52 people, and I'm going to read the prayer or the request for support from this petition. The first item is the permanent closure of Pine Hill Drive at the end of Ryan Road. That's the southern end of Ryan Road down towards the railway line. The second item is the permanent closure of the two driveways from the compulsory acquired properties at number 38A and 44 Pine Hill Drive. And the third item is the total redevelopment of Ryan Road to be funded by the LXRP and the state government with the closure of Pine Hill Drive. So I table this petition here tonight, Mr Mayor, for these concerned residents, and I fully support this petition, and I hope we'll get it to we'll get a response to this petition in the near future, and this gets to our staff to take to the meeting of the LXRP. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. This petition will lay on the table for consideration at the next council meeting in February. And councillors, are there any other petitions that you wish to table? There being none, we'll move along to community question time. We have received a question from Cheryl Billing-Smith, and I see that Ms Billing-Smith is in the gallery. Thank you. I will refer your question to the General Manager, Governance, Facilities and Economy, Debbie Tyson, to read and answer. Ms Tyson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The question from Cheryl Billing-Smith reads, Lily Pond Lake, located off Duncan Drive, was once a jewel in Pakenham's crown. However, sadly, it has been neglected for decades. It has been a long and slow death of neglect. If I walk around Pakenham and all I see is neglect of parks and gardens, unless, of course, you live in Lakeside. What plans do Council and councillors have to rejuvenate our Lily Pond? Or do Council plan to continue the neglect until eventually they can move the bulldozers in, clean it up and sell it off for prime real estate? Thank you for your question, Ms Billing-Smith. My response is as follows. Historically, the Lily Pond had a larger catchment which extended north of the highway. This catchment has been carved up now and drains directly into Pakenham Creek via road drainage, resulting in the pond not receiving the flows it used to. Changes to hydrology have also come from urbanisation around the vicinity, and this is why the pond spends periods of the year dry. While Council has current scheduled programmed litter and open space maintenance around 3/4 of the lake, Council does not own the land on the north-eastern boundary. However, we are currently in communication with the landowner to address the litter and weed concerns on their land for a joint solution to the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Tyson. And we will also provide that in a written submission answer back to you from Ms Billing-Smith. Councillor question time. Councillor Davies, you wish to ask a question regarding Christmas decorations?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. So can I please ask what opportunities are available for community groups and committees to install Christmas decorations within their townships? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I will ask the General Manager of Livable Communities, Lily Rosick, to answer your question, please.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Davies. Each year, Council provides community wellbeing and support grants when community groups or committees can access up to $1,000 towards township Christmas decorations. I can advise that the Kuirup Township Committee and Eastern Dandenong Rangers Association were examples of two successful organisations in obtaining a small change grant of $1,000 for Christmas decorations during the 21-22 grant program. The next round of grants will be open in January 2022 and can be applied for online or through connection with our Connected Communities team.
Thank you, Ms. Rosick. That concludes tonight's meeting. So thank you all for your interests. And as I said before, wishing you all a Merry Christmas, a very safe and happy New Year's, and a safe and happy festive season. We'll see you all in the new year. And thank you for your time during this last year, councillors. It's been a very difficult year. But we've battled through together, and it's been a very difficult year for our communities too. So thank you for all your efforts in continuing to represent our respective communities. That concludes tonight, and I will now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.